Business Blueprint, where we guide entrepreneurs through the building blocks of business success, one insight at a time. I'm your host, Jeffrey Beckles, and today we're taking a look at making money moves through financial literacy. Financial literacy is a game changer in life and for all small businesses. Understanding how to manage cash flow, how budgets work effectively in order to inform financial decisions that can be the difference between growth and struggle. Joining us today to discuss the importance of financial literacy for the small businesses are managing consultant of Next Level Solutions, Hubert Edwards, and the SBDC's Deputy Executive Director, Felice Bethel. Thank you, and both for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Financial literacy is a subject that we've been talking about for decades. Critically important, but yet we seem to still be struggling to get small businesses to understand the importance of learning financial literacy. What gives rise to this reluctance to learning the numbers? We'll start with you, Hubert.
Well, I think, Jeff, in many instances, small businesses, persons are just doing a thing. They get into it sometime because of circumstances. Other times, yes, it's a deliberate move to start a business, but they don't look at it in the framework of a formal business. An entity which is going to be delivering goods and services. And it's more like, it's just my thing. I know exactly what is happening. I have my hands on everything. And usually it starts like that. Especially if you start out as a very micro business.
Right.
You know where every cent is, you know where every product is, you know where every employee is at every single time, because that's usually only you alone.
Right.
But as the business grows, then you kind of lose touch with that. And that's where financial literacy comes in, and having an appreciation that you need to know how finances move, how finances work, how you have discussions, how you sit down and understand certain terms in terms of negotiating with your bankers, negotiating with your customers, negotiating with your suppliers. When you start to appreciate the importance of those things, then, it's a eureka moment. And you realize that the things that you don't know, you have to now step back and figure out a way of learning these things.
So, Felice, based on what Hubert said, and I agree to a great extent, it's more cultural than an indifference.
Based on my experience at SBDC, I think a lot of entrepreneurs are intimidated by the numbers.
Right.
They're intimidated when you start to talk to them about financial statements. Many of them don't know initially what a profit and loss statement is, balance sheet, cash flow statement. And so for us, when we start to talk about financial literacy, as Hubert said, we have to make it very simplified. Just simply understanding how money moves or flows in your business, how it's earned, how it's spent, how it's borrowed, how it's invested. And then we can take them from that step to talking about these different financial statements, teaching them how to read the statements and then make informed decisions towards the growth of their business. And once entrepreneurs understand financial literacy as the GPS for their business journey, then they start to think about a thriving business. So they go from surviving to thriving. And like Hubert said, that's when they start to think about their pricing strategies, negotiating with suppliers, and competing with others in their industries based on their financial strength.
So let's go back then to something you said earlier or alluded to. We started this business as my thing without any thought to intended growth. And then all of a sudden, growth happens. And then you have that eureka moment that says, okay, this is doing a lot better than I thought. What do I now need to do? Because now the business has grown, the demand is there for more and to expand. So at that point, though, what should small businesses be thinking about? We understand now that we got into it. It's a my thing. I can keep track of everything. But now the business has grown much more than you.
Well, I think the first thing to understand is you have the vision, you have the drive, This is your thing. You know where you want to take it. You need to now start to ask yourself some important questions. And one of the first one is, what is it that I don't know?
Yes.
And once you get an appreciation of that answer, then you say, where am I going to find this? Yes. And so there are resources all over. There's resources, somebody can turn up and ask, Jeff Beckles, a question. But you may need to ask somebody else who have a more vested interest in your business. You may need to go pay somebody. You need to come to the SBDC where they can provide you with mentoring, and you have opportunities to sit in classes or go through courses and learn certain things. So it's a starting point of understanding what it is that you don't know, and also developing the willingness and the openness to be vulnerable. Because, a lot of time, we know you mentioned culturally earlier. I don't think it's so much of a cultural thing, but as was mentioned, a fear. A fear of, okay, so I'm an accountant by profession. I would say I'm an accountant. And all of a sudden the person say, well, I don't like numbers.
Right.
But if you're going to get into business, numbers must be your friend.
Yes.
Understanding where the numbers are, understanding where your money is the lifeblood of the business. Right. And one of the big mistakes a lot of even larger business make is not making the distinction between profit and cash.
Right, right.
So we have a lot of money in the till today, but are we profitable? Yep. And until you start to get to the place where you understand the difference between profit and cash, and understand cash flow, and understand the idea of planning for the future, you're going to run into problems. And so to answer your question in a fundamental way is, you need to find the resources which are going to help you to learn and to understand how to run your business from a financial perspective.
That's rich right there, because you're right. Not knowing could be the edge of the cliff.
Yes.
And we want to say to our listeners, it's okay not to know. It's not okay not to know and not find out. Yes. And so that's where the SBDC comes in, Felice, as the leading institution who focuses specifically on small businesses. Talk to us about some of the resources that the SBDC makes available in this capacity about financial literacy and closing that gap.
Okay. So many entrepreneurs engage with SBDC because they want to secure funding for their business, either to start or to grow the business. And so that process starts with a business plan. So they have to be able to articulate to us, okay, I'm going to be selling this particular product or service. What is the pricing strategy around that? They have to be able to explain to us what are their monthly or yearly sales targets are. And if we're trying to have that conversation with them and we realize maybe there's a level of understanding that isn't there, then we offer advisory services to help guide them in terms of understanding what it is that they need to understand about pricing, about setting these sales targets, about their variable and fixed costs. A lot of times they draw a blank when we ask, okay, what are some of your direct costs? Right. And then we have to explain it's things like packaging, your supplies, costs that's directly related to you selling this product. And then we can talk to them about fixed expenses, things like your rent or your website maintenance. And then we just walk them gradually through the process of preparing their business plan. We also help them prepare their historical financials, because in a lot of cases, particularly existing businesses, they're wanting to secure funding, but they have no documentation to say this is my financial track record, because they've kept poor financial records. So we're able to help them construct 2 years of historical statements that's going to complement their business plan. We also help them prepare 3 years of financial projections that are realistic, nothing, high in the sky, unachievable, but something that is believable to lenders and investors.
So here the typical small businessman who says, look, why do I need to know all of that? Why do I need a business plan? I'm only investing $1,500. I only want to sell conch or sell fish or sell flowers. Why do I need a business plan if I'm only going to invest so little?
Well, a business plan isn't really about securing the funding and being able to convince a lender or investor that your business is worth the investment, but it's also your blueprint for how this business is going to operate. Outside of funding, how many people do you need to employ in the business? And a question you asked earlier, a lot of times people find themselves in a sudden growth spurt,
Right.
and they believe because the cash register is full, I go and hire a bunch of people, I start investing in equipment, but nobody is making sure that they're scaling their growth
Right.
and minimizing their costs as they're doing that.
So at the end of the day, our takeaway is that regardless of the size of the investment,
Right.
have a plan for the investment, because if by chance you do have a growth spurt, you'll be able to survive.
Exactly.
We're going to step away and take a short commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the all-important cash flow. How does cash flow and understanding it play in the role of your business success? We'll be right back.
At BOB, we take pride in our business banking.
I chose Bank of the Bahamas because it was a Bahamian-owned bank. The bank has certainly supported our evolution through overdraft facilities, purchasing of equipment, facilitating of salary payments, and I really believe that Bank of the Bahamas is able to help in the development of the local economy. I would truly recommend the services at Bank of the Bahamas.
Welcome back to the SBDC's Business Blueprint. We're here today with Hubert Edwards and Felice Bethel, and we're discussing the importance of financial literacy. Before the break, we laid out the value of having a business plan, but we now want to talk about the all-important cash flow. Hubert, what is cash flow, and how important is it to distinguish between cash flow and profit?
It's fundamental. There was never a business that went out of business and the issue wasn't cash flow.
Right.
At the end of the day, regardless of what is impacting you, you ultimately go out of business when the money is gone. So you could make a ton of profits. So for example, let's say we start a business and we're supplying conch shells. And everybody else in the world wants conch shells. And so we sell maybe a $2 million worth, conch shells. And they plan or promise to pay us in 1 year time. How do you manage during this period when there's a difference between when you sell and when you collect? So understanding the fundamental flows, how do you turn over your business? So in some instances, for example, we are selling to good customers, and we are giving them 90-day credit. But our suppliers are giving us 30 days credit. We have to pay 60 days before we get paid. So understanding that not because you're profitable on paper means that you have money in the till or money in the bank is very important. You're going to do an expansion. Expansion requires new equipment, new building, so on and so forth. And you look at your profit and you say, well, right now we're looking good. We have a $2 million bottom line. We should be able to afford a building for $700,000. But when you go to your bank, you look there's nothing there. Because having sold $5 million worth of products, you have a receivable for $4.5 million. So there's no cash.
There's no cash.
So it's very important that businesses understand that at the end of the day, no matter what is happening, you have to manage that process. And I'm not saying that you must physically have cash in hand. Like, for example, if your customers are asking you for 60 days credit, 60-day credit, and your suppliers are giving you 90-day credit, you're in the money.
Right.
You're getting paid before you need to pay. And consequently, you can run the business on that basis. But as long as you do not have an appreciation of these issues, as long as you take the view that money in is my money and I can now go spend it because I have $10,000, I can take a trip to Miami because we're good, you're always going to run into problems. Right. So understanding what's the difference between your profit and your cash flow and how to use the information in managing the business, I think is very critical.
So that's why it's called a cash flow projection.
Yes.
You're projecting over a longer period of time what our needs will be. And Felice, at the SBDC, one of the things that I know that we put a lot of emphasis on is just that cash flow. Your experience, so tell us a little bit about the reality of how small businesses understand this critical area.
I'll be honest with you, I think it's a work in progress.
Yeah.
So when we work with a client while we're helping them to build their business plan, we have to help them by assigning a BICA or a certified accountant to work along with them and prepare these financial projections. One key thing that we do, particularly when it's related to the cash flow statement, though, is to make sure that they have a monthly cash flow statement for at least 12 years post-funding. Well, sorry, not 12 years, but 12 months,
yes.
Post-funding, because that is where you're able to see on a monthly basis when the business may potentially go in the red or in the black, and how do you prevent or plan against that.
And this also mitigates the challenge of a small business being very capable, great product, great service, being engaged by a larger entity,
right,
to be able to deliver that product,
right,
and it mitigates against them defaulting on their contract.
Right, and then on the opposite side of that, you have some entrepreneurs who have the urge to overstock their shelves. So they have this surplus worth of inventory, but again, what is your inventory turnover rate?
Right.
What is the demand for this product? Do you need to have 6 months worth of inventory
Right.
on your shelves, or do you just need enough to pay, for customers to come in and buy, and then you can turn that into cash and then, reorder?
So, Hubert, inventory and management control has a huge impact on cash flow and
For
its
sure.
ability to be used.
Definitely, because, and this is where the financial literacy comes in. This is where understanding financial statements and having management system work. Because until you know where your money has been tied up, until you know which product is your star product and which products are just, duds, they're not really selling. Because you could be stocking up on the one which is the most attractive. It looks nice and pretty on the shelf, but it is not moving. Until you understand that, look, I sell only $1 million per month, right? And we turn over a quarter or every 6 months about $3 million. So why is it that when I'm sending out my purchases, they're coming back with $5 million worth of goods at any point in time, and we're sitting there and we're taking maybe 9 months to turn that over, including the fact that you have a lot of pilferaging, you have losses, and that's that type of a thing, which you do not know unless you have a good appreciation of what the numbers are saying to you. Because when you do your inventory of that $5 million, how much was sold, how much is left on the shelf, and where the rest go.
Thank you so much. This has been a very rich conversation. When we come back, we'll welcome our associate, Ariel Pinder, with our Mentorship Minute. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
We have to be mindful that as much as we want touristic development, what impacts the fisheries? Over-coastal development, destruction of mangroves, overzealousness of the industry. We have a new movement called do-it-yourself fishing. That is anglers who come to the Bahamas, they don't engage in hiring a guide. Because of this approach, you are going to have people who are going to exhaust the resources.
This is an industry that's preserved. It should be for Bahamian guides only. We have the DIYs coming in here, and they're destroying our flats.
We try not to overfish certain areas, so we'll fish a certain area and we'll back off for a while because we don't want the fish to feel too much pressure.
It's not just using the buzzwords of the environment and the ecology. The tourists can be educated that the more you support local ownership, people are doing it obviously the right way, the more the economic circulation in the communities.
I think the most critical thing is accountability, and that accountability by way of legislation, both the Act and regulations to govern fly fishing in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
I look at conservation efforts and the regulation that I've seen to protect the industry that's in the developed world. All of those jurisdictions have implemented strong regulation to protect their fisheries. We are way behind, but we do have a movement and a consciousness. We know where we need to be. Those are our resources, and we have to make an exerted effort to protect it because that's the only gift that we have been given. And if we don't protect that, then we lose everything.
Building the lodge, I understood clearly the mission to continue what my father started. From this lodge, it has served as the headquarters. We finally got legislation passed in 2016, and it legitimized the guiding profession. We pushed to get the program established into BAMSI in the training of the next generation of guides, but it extends way beyond that.
We need more Bahamians in the industry who are doing the research to provide the information to the industry, that is to fishermen and to everybody who benefits from the resources.
We don't know the resources in this country. We grew up just hearing about sun, sand, and sea.
It is going to be through education and awareness, whether it's within our schools, whether it's in our communities, to conserve the environment, that is going to sustain the fly fishing industry.
Well, the future of fly fishing in the company, I think fly fishing is a very, very unique spot. I think it's going to get better because the guides are now being all certified. They're all getting proper knowledge of handling and how to run the whole system.
If you're a youngster and you want to get into this, it's a job like any other job. You got to live it. You got to love it.
Young entrepreneurs coming in, you want that kind of interest. You want that kind of drive and desire. You want to carry that. You want to become the product.
Tiny Tots was birthed about a year after I gave birth to my daughter. I was looking for better alternatives to feed her. Organic was on top of my list, and the options were very few here and limited. So I started with deliveries and online orders, and it just went from there. I'm passionate about the business because I'm passionate about health. Health for me is something close to home because I have a lot of family members who oftentimes, before the age of 50, are diagnosed with some sort of non-communicable disease. I realized that it starts from young. Automatically, people assume that organic is expensive, and organic isn't necessarily expensive, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to bring a product that was readily available for persons from all walks of life. I wanted something that all socioeconomic classes could have access to and be able to feed their children with healthier options. So Tiny Tots is all about organic. One of my major milestones that I'm proud of is the fact that I'm able to scale the way that I envisioned from the very onset. SBDC helped me with that tremendously with the loan and the grant funding that I got. From the onset, they were very helpful. They made sure that I had everything that I need to run a proper business, making sure that the business was not only profitable, but also sustainable. You know, and I figured that if we can get a nation of people to start eating better from their younger, we don't have to try and force it into their diets as they get older, or even worse, when they find out that they're sick.
Are you ready to take the next step in growing your business? Check your eligibility for our guaranteed loan program at sbdcbahamas.com/GLP or call 461-7232 to learn more about how the SBDC can support your business.
Hi everyone, I'm Ariel Pinder, your host for the Mentorship Minute. Today, let's talk about a crucial step before applying for funding: getting your business in order. Many small business owners struggle with meeting loan requirements, but preparation is key. Ensure you have a solid business plan, up-to-date financial records, and a clear strategy for using the funds effectively. Lenders and grant providers want to see that you're organized and ready to manage your money wisely. At the SBDC, we offer advisory support to help you get these elements in place. Take advantage of these resources to strengthen your application and improve your chances of securing funding. For more details, visit sbdcbahamas.com or give us a call. Keep building smart, and best of luck with your funding journey.
Thank you, Ariel. Very exciting indeed. Before we took our break, we talked about the importance of understanding the difference, the need for cash flow management. What are some of the common mistakes in regards to cash that small businesses make? What are some of those things that we see that are glaring that we need to address for our listening audience? Please.
Unfortunately, there are many common mistakes, commingling business and personal funds, initially overspending too much money on the wrong things, not operating with a budget, not maintaining proper accounting records, not reconciling your bank statements with your accounting system. I mean, and the list goes on.
Right. Right. And Hubert, we hear these things and we don't typically pay attention to them, but they're also leading us down a path sometimes to no return.
Mm-hmm. It's a fundamental issue when you have a business, in law. The business, if it's a registered company, it's a real legal entity. It ought to be separated from your personal life. We know how these things started. We started based on our own little thing, right. And a lot of time the commingling takes place at the beginning. But it needs to be separated because the business cash is not your cash. Right. And you have to be disciplined enough, and you have to have the information in order to make that distinction. Usually persons are fine with doing that until they need to be funded. They go to the bank. You ask for financial statements. You don't have a financial statement. So, okay, let's start with your bank statements. And, all of a sudden you see number, then Miami, then Bahamas here. And it doesn't read well. Mm. Also, the idea of a business person you need to be able to project a level of discipline. And your personal statement is not normally that disciplined. Right. It's not normally a recognition of, okay, I am budgeting my monies. I am looking for having a type of a reserve or a rainy day fund. I'm understanding that I'm paying various customers or various suppliers, and we're able to use this information and pull it into our accounting system or whatever system that we use in order to get that information. So it's very, very important that persons understand that issues around, as mentioned by Felicia, commingling and otherwise, you need to discipline yourself in not doing those things.
And you mentioned a very important point, cash reserve. How important is it to have cash reserve?
Business is difficult to predict. So you can write the best business plan, right? But in actuality, it doesn't always go according to plan. And you need to have that reserve so that, let's say you're importing your product or equipment from China, and because of these tariffs, now you have to pay extra to get these items in. And we've seen it happen so many times where business owners are importing products, equipment, and then it gets here in Nassau and they can't clear their items through customs. And so it racks up all these storage fees that exceed, the original price for buying the product or equipment. So it's always best to have a contingency or cash reserve so that unforeseen expenses can be quickly dealt with.
So it's fair to say then, even profits need to be planned, and profits can be planned such that there is a contribution to our financial reserve for those difficult times that you mentioned. So, final thoughts for our listening audience with regard to financial literacy.
Well, financial literacy, we could talk about this all day. The whole idea is if you're going to get into business, you have an obligation to yourself, you owe an obligation to the business to learn the things that you don't know, to be disciplined, and to always understand that financial information, financial literacy is going to provide you with the tools to effectively manage your business. You have decisions to make, operational decisions, strategic decisions, pricing, products, all of that type of a thing. The foundation for all of that comes from having financial information, and the extent to which you can understand and manipulate that information in a positive way, then certainly it augurs well for the success of your business.
Excellent. Felice, the SBDC focuses on small businesses. What are some of the programs that we offer to small businesses in this regard?
So in terms of training, we have the Business Blueprint training course that has 10 modules. One of the modules is dedicated to financial literacy, teaching entrepreneurs how to prepare their own profit and loss statement. So maybe you don't have the technical ability to prepare a balance sheet and cash flow statement, but at least you can start off with the profit and loss statement. And then once your business is funded through SBDC and one of our funding partners, we assign you to a mentor that will work with you for a period of 3 years post-funding. And one of the main things that are discussed when you meet up with your mentor on a weekly or monthly basis is your financial statements, interpreting those financial statements, not just looking at them from the perspective of what happened in the past, but how do we drive these numbers moving forward?
Felice, thank you so much. Hubert, thank you. The conversation has been robust. It's been really insightful for all of our listeners. We thank you for joining us on this edition of Business Blueprint, and we hope that the information shared with you today has provided you some inspiration and an opportunity to get excited about what you can actually do in your small business. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to you joining us on the next edition of the SBDC's Business Blueprint.
Tired of looking at the same old kitchen? Step 1. Our talented recommended designer, Mark, crafts a custom design just for you. Step 2. Once your design is ready, CBS Bahamas makes ordering effortless. Your dream kitchen is within reach. Step 3. Our recommended installers bring your vision to life, ensuring every detail is perfectly in place. Sit back and relax as your dream space becomes a reality. Visit cbsbahamas.com and start bringing your home improvement dreams to life today.
In a world where our health defines our future and the Caribbean stands on the front lines of climate change, rising NCDs and global challenges, knowledge becomes our greatest defense. Caribbean Medical TV is your guide on the journey to wellness and insight, featuring our region's own doctors, nurses, climate specialists and medical institutions. From physical well-being to the emotional and mental balance we all deserve.